Hi everyone, this is Amit Panchmatia from IMS and I'm here with the IIFT 2019 analysis. IIFT 2019 was an online test. In fact, the first time IIFT had actually gone online. And IIFT is the last test among all the MBA entrance tests to go online. Now, let's talk about what changed as the test went online. First thing which changed was the total number of questions and the number of sections. IIFT this year had 4 sections compared to the last 2 years when there were 6 sections. Now understand, how does that change a student's mindset, his cutoffs, or how will that impact the test? The first thing which 4 sections does compared to 6 sections is it makes the time allocation slightly easier, and because of which, a student is able to decide that how much time he wants to give to each section, and also he does not have to worry about 6 different cutoffs. He has to now worry about only 4 cutoffs. Yes, we believe that there will be sectional cutoffs. Even though the test did not say anywhere that there are sectional cutoffs, we believe IIFT 2019 will still have sectional cutoffs, and we'll be talking about them in just a bit. So there were a total of 110 questions in 4 sections and a total of 300 marks. Now, if you compare this to CAT, what is a CAT? CAT was 100 questions and 300 marks, but CAT has 3 hours. Compared to that, IIFT has exactly only 2 hours. So hence, it's also definitely a test of speed compared to CAT. Now, let's talk about the sectional breakups. So QA, LRDI and VARC. So QA was one section, LR and DI was clubbed into one section, VARC was clubbed into one section. These were 3 sections where all the questions were of 3 marks each with positive 3 and negative 1, while GK or general awareness, as you want to call it, was the only section with 1.5 marks each with a 0.5 negative. Now, the number of questions. Let's start with the number of questions. So QA had 25 questions, and we expect, that is out of 75 marks, we expect the cutoff to be anywhere between 12 to 15 marks. And we feel that the time allocated to this section should have been 30 to 35 minutes. Similarly, if I look at VARC, the number of questions were 35, and we expect the cutoff to be anywhere between 20 to 25 marks with the similar time allotted like QA. While LRDI was 30 questions, where DI was easier, LR was a little bit more difficult. We'll come to that in a bit, with the expected cutoff to be around 18 to 20 marks with time allotted to be 35 to 40 minutes. Now GK, which was roughly which was 20 questions, we expect the cutoff to be anywhere between 5 to 7 marks, because GK traditionally the cutoffs at IIFT have been slightly low. So GK cutoffs expected to be around 5 to 7 marks, maximum of 10 minutes allotted to that should be more than enough. So this is now, understand, you will feel that the cutoffs, the sectional cutoffs are not adding up to the overall cutoff, because the overall cutoff is expected to be anywhere in the range of 125 to 130. Yes, a lot of people, when we say this, have found this to be a little bit high. But please understand that the sectional cutoffs are low and the overall cutoff is high. It's always been a trend at IIFT. The reason for this is because IIFT, normally what we say, they don't have really sectional cutoffs. They have like sectional minimums. You really have to score a minimum number of marks to reach a cutoff, and then you have to do well at 1 or 2 sections which you are really good at, and hence go and ace the maximum cutoffs. So this is what is expected. 125 to 130 should be the cutoff for a general male. Now understand, why are we specifying this? Because last year IIFT had given or had made the cutoff for the female candidate 2 marks lesser than the male candidate. Now if I compare that to this year, since everything has become 3 times, each question is marked by 3 times, we expect the cutoff, if the same thing follows, we expect the girl cutoff to be down by around 6 marks. The OBC cutoff, we expect it to be around 110 to 115, while we expect the SC/ST cutoff to be around 95. Now, this is what our cutoff expectations are. We will go to each individual section now. Let's start with the QA section and the analysis of this section. Now, the QA section was believed, or on our discussion with a lot of students, was believed to be the most difficult section of the IIFT 2019. What made the QA section difficult? There were 25 questions, a lot of questions in arithmetic, but the problem was the questions were pretty lengthy and were difficult to understand and analyze. Now, always the length of the question plays a very important role in QA, in selecting the questions. A lot of students find it very tedious to read these questions and hence understand them. If I look at a breakup, majorly arithmetic and geometry have the two areas which I would say were actually really important in this paper. 11 questions from arithmetic and roughly 7 questions from geometry. That is 18 questions from arithmetic and geometry combined, 25 out of a total of 25 questions. Now, let's have a look at the breakup exactly. So, for example, numbers had only one question. It was definitely an easy question. Arithmetic had total of 11 questions, 2 easy, 6 medium and 3 difficult. Algebra had 2 questions, 1 easy and 1 medium. Geometry had 7 questions, surprisingly not a single easy question. I would say 3 medium and 4 difficult, while modern maths had 4 questions with 2 easy, 1 medium and 1 difficult. So, total of 6 easy questions, 11 medium difficulty level questions and 8 difficult questions, making up your 25 questions. Now, this is what, if you look at it, there were only 6 easy questions. Now, when you compare this to the CAT, a lot of students found the section very difficult, because at the CAT, out of the 34 questions, you definitely had around 14-15 easy questions. So, it's easier to select those questions and attempt them. Here, the selection of the question becomes very, very important. Also understand that it is no longer a paper pencil test where you can scroll through the questions very easily. This always makes it a little bit more difficult to select. Online test always makes it a little bit more difficult to select the questions. And hence our understanding is that if you had attempted around 9 to 10 questions with 80 to 85% accuracy, that should be really good enough to not only clear the cutoff but also maybe maximize your score towards this section. Let's have a look at the next section. The next section is the DLR section. DLR section had a total of 30 questions with 3 marks per question, -1 for that was standard. Now, understand what changed this time in DLR section drastically. First of all, DI and LR became one section. DI became much more comfortable than what DI was over the past couple of years in IIFT. IIFT is popular, or I would say rather unpopular for its DI, where it is very, very time consuming or calculation intensive. This year, DI at IIFT was not so. There were 5 sets containing of 4 sets of 4 questions each and 1 set with 2 questions. What was the major thing? Simple calculations. Questions were pretty straightforward. Normally, there are a lot of none of these and cannot be determined in a set, which make DI at IIFT very difficult. You have to solve for all the years and all. All that was not there this time, and hence DI was slightly more easier, I would say, than LR also. Now, what happened because of this? Was that students who were ready to only tackle LR separately and maybe just were planning to clear DI cutoffs by only a minimum would have been caught unaware. You had to be ready for a change, and hence DI was that one thing which I think where students were maybe caught unaware and they were not ready to attempt DI. They thought that LR would be easier, which was not so. Let's look at the LR section now. There were 12 questions in LR, which were out of them 11 were in 4 sets. And one was a standalone series question, which was like a very, very straightforward question. I'm sure most of you have got that question correct. LR sets were dominated by questions on arrangements mainly. There was one question on sequential input-output. Now, this was very, very similar to last year's IIFT question. Now, if I look at sequential input-output, this question was literally very similar to last year's IIFT. So, I'm sure if you had gone for this year's IIFT paper, you would have solved last year's IIFT paper as practice, and then you should have got this sequential input-output set easily. So, overall, what is the analysis? The DI was much easier than LR. Moreover, because DLR became one section, ideally students could have aimed at scoring more in DI and less at LR, maybe attempting one LR set, the sequential input-output set as I said, and also getting that one single question. Now, let's look at the table which talks about the breakup of the section. So, let's understand how the sets were and the breakup of them. The first set was a set on table with 5 products purchased by 17 customers. This set had 4 questions. It could be labeled as comfortably an easy to medium set. The second set also was a table set, t-shirts of different colors and sizes sold in 2 locations. Again 4 questions and an easy to medium set. Bar chart and line graph, food spent and sentimental index was a slightly, I would say, again an easy to medium set. The difficult set was the one with the 3 bar graphs, where production cost in 2 different locations were given. This was a difficult set, so could have been avoided easily. And the Venn diagram set with the number of employees in 3 departments was definitely very easy. I'm sure by now, after looking at CAT, you're very comfortable with Venn diagrams. You've done enough practice for them. Looking at the LR section, there was one set on arrangement. Seating arrangement of 7 individuals with different professions. This would be a medium to difficult set, You had to think about the seating arrangement as well as the profession. The arrangements were given slightly differently. A lot of introspection went into it, and you really had to look at the set before you actually could reach the solution. The second set on arrangement, which is a linear arrangement set, even though looked very simple initially, was actually a difficult set with 3 questions in it. Sequential output would be a medium to difficulty levels, a difficult set if you were looking at it standalone. But because I assume that most of you all had practiced the 2018 paper, it was so similar to that set that you should have definitely got this. The puzzle set, which was time taken by a lift on different floors with 2 questions, was again a medium to difficulty level set. While the standalone question, which was a series question, was very simple. And as I said, we expected everybody to get this question easily. Now, if I look at the information which we got from a lot of students, it was mainly about the sequential input-output set that was very similar. Hence, a lot of students were able to crack that set. So I would say an attempt of 12 to 14 questions with 80 to 85% accuracy within the stipulated time period should have been really good for this section. Let's have a look at the BARC section. Now again, compared to the last 2 years, VA and RC have been combined into a single section with 19 VA questions and 16 RC questions. The 16 RC questions have been broken up into 4 passages with 4 questions each. Each passage was around 500 to 600 words and were definitely much easier than what you saw last week at CAT. Now that would have been slightly easier for a lot of students, seeing those passages which are not very long, not very difficult, and the passages were comfortable to read. The passages were easy to comprehend and interpret. Most of the questions were direct and easy. Since time is a constraint at IIFT, obviously number of attempts cannot be as high as you would see at a CAT or something, and hence I would say the number of attempts at RC would definitely be moderate. Let's look at the breakup of RCs. The first RC, which was on sustaining versus disruptive innovation, was approximately 600 words, which was 4 questions. Again, all RCs were 4 questions, where 3 were specific detail questions while 1 was inferential. It was a medium difficulty level passage, I would say. The second RC, which was negotiating styles, which was again approximately 600 words with 2 specific detail questions, 1 inferential question and 1 title question, was an easy to medium passage. The third passage, which was on democracy and totalitarian regimes, approximately 500 words with 3 specific detail, 1 inferential question, was a medium difficulty level question. The Japan and culture RC was approximately 500 words with 4 questions, again 3 specific detail, 1 inferential question, easy to medium difficulty level question. As we said earlier also, in RC, it was not so much about the difficulty level of RC, but the time constraint which you have because of the test pattern, which would keep your number of attempts to moderate to high, but you could not attempt all RCs obviously because you would not have that kind of time slot for this section. Looking at the VA, the verbal ability part of this section, it consisted of total, as we said, of 19 questions. First one, which was a crossword and synonyms, which is very popular with IIFT, had 3 questions, would be of medium difficulty level. Analogy, there were 4 questions, again of medium difficulty level. The fill in the blank prepositions, 2 questions which are very straightforward and very easy, should have got them easily. Very similar to what is asked at NMAT. Identify grammatically correct sentence, there was 1 question which was again an easy question. Match the words with its meaning, 1 question, pretty difficult one. Idioms and their meanings, 3 questions for a medium difficulty level. Sentence completion, 2 blanks with 2 questions, easy questions I would say. And parajumbles, 3 medium difficulty level questions, maybe slightly easier than what you saw at CAT. So the total number of attempts I would say should have been around 17 to 19 questions. So if you had 80 to 85% accuracy, it should have been good for this section. The sectional cutoffs, as we have predicted, will be slightly higher for this section compared to the other sections because of the easy nature of the test. Let's have a look at the last section now. The last section was the GA, or the General Awareness section. The GA section, I would say, was comparatively easier than last year's GA section. It had 20 questions and we expected you to spend around 7 to 8 minutes with 8 to 10 attempts with around 60 to 70% accuracy should have been really good for this section. Now when I say how was the pattern of this section, So there were 20 questions, out of which mainly all of them were MCQ questions with 2 match the column type of questions, which is very typical of IIFT. Now also there were 6 static GK questions and 14 general awareness questions. Now when I look at this, the areas were really well distributed. So not to give any advantage to any particular student from any particular area. So it was not that there were questions only on finance or only on commerce or say more on software. So nothing like that. It was all well distributed. Several questions we also found were from the IMS IIFT GK test, So a student who had solved these tests really well would have found some questions very similar to them. So this is how the GA section of this year's IIFT was. We expect the cutoff to be anywhere between 5.5 to 7 marks. So if I now look at the overall analysis of the test, overall basically since IIFT has gone online for the first time, the first major question which everybody has was, were there any glitches? Well, there were no real such glitches reported, and most of the places the test went on very smoothly. As far as the interface was, it was very, very similar to CMAT. You could shift between sections, and that is one major thing in IIFT. A student can shift between sections, and hence he has to plan his time really well between the sections. How much time does he want to give to which section? So if you're an engineer, you would want to give more to quant and DI. If you're not an engineer student, you would want to give more time to verbal, so that you can maximize your scores accordingly. Now understand that since IIFT does not really have sectional cutoffs, means they have sectional cutoffs, but the sectional cutoffs are normally very, very less, and hence students are able to clear the sectional cutoffs. You really needed to maximize your score to get the overall cutoff in place. Well, whatever happened is already gone. You have some more tests coming up. Please be ready for those, and best of luck for your results.